today I am going to talk to you about ordering rational numbers. So if you remember from yesterday, rational numbers are fractions and decimals that come to an end or they repeat. So we're going to order those today. The biggest thing I want to point out is probably the biggest mistake made when ordering rational numbers is doing least to greatest instead of greatest to least or vice versa. So please make sure you're paying attention to when it says greatest to least or least to greatest. Highlight it, underline it, pay close attention to it. So the first one I'm going to do is least to greatest. So keep in mind that since we have negative numbers, those are going to be the smallest. This way is going to be, it goes smaller as you go this way and bigger as you go that way. So we have a mixture of percents, fractions, and decimals. So just like last year, when you have fractions and percents, you always change those to decimals, just to have it all in the same format when you order it. So these three are already decimals. So we have to change these two to decimals instead. So with percents, what you do is you divide by 100 because percents are out of 100. So you always need to divide by 100, or you can move the decimal back 2 times. 1, 2. So this is equal to 2.4, not 240, 2.4. All right, that's 240%. So this one is a fraction. All right, when we change a fraction to a decimal, we divide it. So we are going to divide 7 by 9. And no, it's not 9 divided by 7 because then you would get a number bigger than 1. And 7/9 isn't bigger than 1. So we need to put 7 on the inside. So we're going to divide 7. 9 goes into 70 6 times. We get 63. No, I'm sorry, 7 times. What am I talking about? 7 times. We get 63. We subtract. We get 7. Oh, and it keeps going. And we get 7 repeating. So that means that negative 3 7/9 is equal to negative 3.7 repeating. So now that they're all now that they're all decimals, we can order them. Keep in mind this is 3.77, it keeps going, that 7 keeps going. So we're going to start with our smallest numbers because they're least to greatest. So we're going to look at our negative numbers. So we have 3 negative numbers. And when we order negative numbers, we have to remember that the more negative, the smaller number. So it's the opposite of when we order our positive numbers. So what would be the biggest number as a positive is now our smallest number as a negative. So I'm going to look, I have negative 3.7 repeating. I have negative 3.7. Remember, after that 7 is a 0. After this 7 was another 7. Then we have negative 3.07. So let's think about which of those 3 negative numbers is going to be farthest from 0, our smallest number. It's the opposite as a negative. So we first look at our 10th place. Well, this one has a 0 in it, so that's actually going to be closer to 0. So these two have both a 7, but we're thinking what's going to be the farthest away from 0? Well, the bigger number as a positive is going to be our farthest from 0, so that's our smallest number. So negative 3 7/9 is our smallest. It's the farthest away from 0. It's the most negative number. So we're done with that one. Then this one. And notice I'm putting it back into the original form. I'm not leaving it as a decimal anymore. Once I use it as a decimal, I don't need it. So now I'm working my way closer to 0, and then this one is just a bit closer to 0. So these numbers would actually be, this one would actually be largest as a positive, so now it's the smallest as a negative. So it's just a little bit bigger than this one because if we look in our hundredths place, there's a 7 instead of a 0. Then we go into our positives and we have 2.7 2.43 and 2.4. So the 10th place is the same. So then we go, remember this is going to be a 0. So then we go to our 100th place and we have a 3 and a 0. So now the smallest as a positive number, so now we're going back to our positive numbers. We've crossed over 0. We have 240%. Again, I'm putting it back to the original form. Then we have 2.43. All right, so keep in mind that the negatives are flipped around. This one would be the biggest as a positive, but since it's a negative, it's farther down the number line. So it's the smallest. Now let's go over to greatest to least. So now we're going to start with our positive numbers. I just have 4 numbers here. So again, I need to change my non-decimals to decimals. I made this one nice and easy for you guys because 2/5 was one you had to memorize last year. So 2/5 is equal to 0.4. All right, you can divide it. If you don't remember, you can always divide it, or you can think, okay, if I multiply both the numerator and denominator by 2, then I get 4/10, which is where that comes from. So negative 3 and 2/5 is negative 3.4. Then we have another percent. Remember, we move backwards or divide by 100. So we have 0.67. So now we're going to start with our positive numbers because we're going greatest to least. So I am looking at 0.67 and 6.2. Notice if I only moved my decimal back 1 space, if I'd only divided by 10, I would have gotten the wrong answer. So you have to think, okay, I have to move back 2 because it's changing a percent to a decimal. So greatest number is going to be 6.2. Then the 67%. So those two are done. Now I'm going to my negative numbers. So I have negative 3 and 4/10, negative 3 and 2/1000. So I need to look at my decimal spots. Well, I'm thinking I'm going to put my greatest number first, which is actually my smallest number as a positive. So what's going to be the closest to 0? The closest number to 0 is going to be this one, okay? So I put negative 3.002 and then negative 3.4. Again, this is closer to 0. This is closer to 0. So it's flipped around. This would normally be our smaller number, but since it's a negative, it's going to be greater than that one since it's closer to the 0. All right, I hope this helped. Good luck on your practice.